Hello and a very warm welcome to today's session brought to you by Team Testbook Super Coaching. I hope all of you are doing really well this Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon rather. Without further ado, let's just very quickly get started with today's session. Today, this is of course our rescheduled class that we had on Thursday. और आने वाले time में as it is, with 2024 coming in, हम लोग weekends के ऊपर भी practice marathons as well as concept building marathons के लिए मिलने वाले हैं. Without further ado, let's just very quickly get started with today's session. आज का जो हमारा सेशन है ये दो पार्ट्स में डिवाइडेड रहेगा और दूसरे पार्ट यानी कि जब हम कल 10:30 पे मिलेंगे उसके अंतर्गत मैं ना सिर्फ कंपैरेटिव लिटरेचर व्हिच इज बिकम नाउ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट स्पेशली अगर आप पीएचडी एंट्रेंसेस रहे हैं और इनडायरेक्टली नेट में भी आपको कंपैरेटिव लिटरेचर के क्वेश्चंस मिलते हैं. So we have to be well aware about it. We need to be rest assured कि हमें how we can actually ace this. We need to know all the tricks of the trade. तो देरी नहीं करते हुए फटाफट से स्टार्ट करते हैं. Let's just very quickly get started all together. Let's just very quickly get started. Good morning, good afternoon, Devashish, Arshia, Supratim, Divya, Jahan. I'll just share it on the Telegram so that all of you can actually join and you all know कि the session has also started. ठीक है? आज हम लोग क्या करेंगे? आज we will be covering three important poets of the American 20th century American literature. देखिए American poetry and American drama of the 20th century and also of course American novel ये ऐसे यूनिट्स हैं which are evergreen topics altogether. You are able to see multiple times कि आपके नेट के अंदर questions आते हैं and overall also you need to have a proper understanding. You need to build a proper sane understanding of these. ठीक है, ये आपका जो PDF है American Poets of the 20th Century इसका जो दूसरा पार्ट हम जब कल भी कर लेंगे मैं आपको ये PDF टेलीग्राम चैनल पे भेज दूंगी. इससे पहले आज के जो हम 3 पोएट्स करेंगे और आपका आस्क इज ऑल्सो दिस कि इमीडिएटली राइट आफ्टर द क्लास आप लोग बैठ जाइएगा और जो मैंने आपको अमेरिकन पोएट्री ऑक्सफोर्ड कंपेनियन टू अमेरिकन पोएट्री की PDF शेयर करी थी उसको एक बार अच्छी तरह से आप स्किम थ्रू कर लीजिएगा. ठीक है, सो दैट विल बी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. दैट विल बी समथिंग दैट यू ऑल हैव टू कीप इन माइंड. चलिए अब देरी नहीं करते हुए फटाफट से स्टार्ट करते हैं. तो आज जो 3 राइटर्स हम लोग कवर करेंगे दीज आर 3 वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग poets, so to say. One, of course, is the evergreen poet because no class on 20th century American poetry can ever be complete without talking about this particular poet. ये इनको हम बीच में देखेंगे और ये जो PDF भी जो मैं आपके साथ शेयर करूंगी काफी इंटरेस्टिंग राइटर्स आपको इसके अंदर मिलेंगे. So that is also something which is very interesting for all of us to note and understand. ठीक है, तो let's just very quickly get started. Of course, at a time when we are talking about writers like Ezra Pound, etc., they are becoming important. There are, of course, other pool of writers who are equally critically important. Okay, so let's quickly get started in analyzing these poets one by one. I hope we are all very clear about the agenda for today's session. The agenda for today's session is that we will be looking at 3 American poets. ठीक है, ये जो 3 important American poets हैं हम उनको आज देखने वाले हैं. We will be covering these 3 American poets who are going to be there and बाकी के जो poets हैं we'll be covering tomorrow at 10:30 p.m. और उसके बाद I'll share this PDF also with all of you on the Telegram platform so that you will be able to cover it properly. ठीक है, और ये जो 3 poets हम आज cover कर रहे हैं you will be able to see that they are very different, right? I'll be starting on with the first question कि Spoon River anthology किसने लिखी है. That's going to be our first poet that we'll be analyzing and this is where we actually come on to the question. So who's the writer who's associated with the Spoon River anthology? Spoon River anthology किसने लिखी है? Who's this writer who's associated with the Spoon River anthology? जल्दी से बताइएगा. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right, quickly बताइए who has written this particular work called Spoon River Anthology. Spoon River Anthology किसने लिखा है? You can give it a shot, you can give it a try altogether. So this is Edgar Lee Masters. Okay, please remember that. और ये हमारे first important poet है आज की class के लिए, right? So when we're talking about the Spoon River anthology, what are we able to see? Who's coming in? I'll just hide myself a little bit so that it's a lot more easier for all of you to actually see this. One second. I'll just make myself a little smaller over here so that you'll, okay, now I think you'll be able to see it, right? So when we are talking about Edgar Lee Masters, Edgar Lee Masters is coming. He is of course one of America's prominent poets. Whenever we talk about 20th century American poetry, Edgar Lee Masters का नाम of course हमेशा हर एक anthology में आता है because he is a representative writer. ठीक है, ये एक ऐसे राइटर हैं जो अमेरिकन लिटरेचर को रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं, द काइंड ऑफ राइटिंग। अभी आपको मैं थीम्स के बारे में भी बताऊंगी, एंड इवन स्पून रिवर एंथोलॉजी। एंड इट इज राइट दैट वी आर डूइंग दिस लेक्चर, वी आर डूइंग दिस सेशन आफ्टर योर सेशन ऑन टीएस एलियट। आपको याद है हम लोगों ने लास्ट क्लास में when we were discussing about T.S. Eliot, when we were talking about T.S. Eliot, we were also able to see how T.S. Eliot's imagery was also very new, very modern. That was another interesting aspect that we were able to look at. Okay, so please keep that in mind that all of these poets who are coming in, मैं थोड़ा से और भी poets आपको introduce करवाऊंगी. So Edgar Lee Masters was there. इन्होंने क्या किया था? He got psychological complexity. Psychologically ये characters को study करवा रहे हैं, right? What are we able to see? Sometimes earlier he was neglected, right? Edgar Lee Masters was neglected, right? However, इनका जो Spoon River anthology, and look at the dates of Spoon River anthology. This is the same dates as your Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. So you're able to see that in 1915 there is a new ethos that is coming. This is inaugurating a new period in modern poetry altogether. ठीक है, और different characters हैं इसके अंदर. Spoon River anthology में different characters हैं. It's just not one figure of Prufrock that you're able to see. ठीक है, and what are you able to look at? You are able to look at that there are verse monologues. Monologues become important, and monologues are actually correlated with telling you more about the psyche of the character. आपको उस character के बारे में पता चलता है, in depth पता चलता है. ये आपको थोड़ा सा ध्यान रखना पड़ेगा कि कैसे. Yes, Jahan, very nice. That's absolutely true. So Edgar Lee Masters writing the Spoon River anthology. यहाँ से आपको Spoon River anthology याद रखनी है. Psychological probity है, verse monologues लिख रहे हैं. And please remember he was transitional figure. Transitional figure. ये English romantic writers को पढ़ रहे थे like Wordsworth, Keats, Shelley, even Browning also, right? And American. So Browning, even though he's a Victorian poet, but he was also studying them. And American poets को भी Emerson, Whitman, इनको भी अच्छी तरह से read कर रहे थे. So he was literally trying to understand some of the best practices, understand some of the ways in which these writers are trying to express themselves, right? And हमेशा याद रखना, he's talking about everyday naturalistic truths, right? He's not interested, these people are not interested in poetic complexities. All that they are interested in, all that they are really looking at is trying to tell you what is the reality. They want to hold a mirror up to you, right? That's what they're very clear about. They want to hold a mirror. Okay, so please keep that in mind. So Savita, if you've not heard about his name before, I hope it is clear. अब अगर आपके एग्जाम में आएगा match the following के केस में Spoon River Anthology 1915 जो psychological verse monologues दे रहा है लोगों के characters के और everyday reality बता रहा है, वो किसने लिखा है? वो Edgar Lee Masters ने लिखा है. So please remember Edgar Lee Masters Spoon River Anthology, Savita, so that next time if this question is actually asked, you are able to answer it in a proper manner altogether. So please remember that. अच्छा, आपकी जो Spoon River Anthology है, ठीक है, आपकी जो Spoon River Anthology आ रही है, इस anthology में क्या क्या important है? I'll just hide myself so that you will be able to see this entirely. ठीक है, देखिए Spoon River Anthology के अंदर ये Lee Masters, what is he doing? He's trying to create the symbol of democracy. ये town symmetry है. When he buries long past residents such as a town marshal, druggist, physician, housewife side by side. तो ये आपका देखिए ये symmetry का जो motive है ये आता है. जैसे you're also able to see that when we are looking at say elegy written in a country churchyard, so Gray भी इसको लेके आ रहा है. तो Spoon River Anthology के अंदर क्या हो रहा है कि town symmetry में कैसे हर एक person who's cremated, right, who's not cremated actually is buried, beg your pardon, उनकी हर एक स्टोरी आपको पता चलती है. ठीक है, कौन कौन रेजिडेंट्स हैं, एल्मर, हर्मन, बर्ट, टॉम, चार्ली, they are all lying alongside one unknown person also is there. So what are you able to see कि overall ये सारे के सारे जो लोग हुआ buried in the cemetery, इनके बारे में he's trying to talk about it. how their fates were, किसी को फीवर हुआ, किसी का एक्सीडेंट हुआ, कि कोई जेल में मर गया, कोई चाइल्ड बर्थ के टाइम पे मर गया. So causes of deaths were very different, right? The causes of deaths were very different, the stories were very different, everybody had their own struggle altogether. Okay, and please remember ये जो lamentations हैं about the people who have died, about the people who have died altogether, ये देखो, now look at this line, all are sleeping on the hill. So at the end of the day, there is also this comforting blessing that at least now you are away from all the daily troubles. You're comforting them, right? कि ठीक है, they've died, but they're actually at ease with themselves. They don't have the hustle of the daily life. They don't really have to deal with the day-to-day realities altogether. ठीक है? So or ultimately the entire narrative is concluding with the dramatic epilogue. ठीक है, जहां पर आपका चेकर गेम है, बील्ज़ेबब का ओरेटरी आ रहा है. सो लुक एट इट दैट सिमेट्री है, आपके साइकोलॉजिकल प्रॉब्लम्स आ रहे हैं. सो इसमें आपको दो तीन चीजें जो यहाँ पर अच्छी तरह से ध्यान में रखनी पड़ेंगी कि कैसे ये आपको एवरीडे पीपल के बारे में ही ट्राइंग टू टॉक अबाउट दोज ऑल टुगेदर, right? But at the heart of it, there is a comforting reality about death also that is being spoken about. Okay, so please keep that also in mind, because a lot of times we think that modern poetry is barren, it doesn't really give any reassurance. That's not true, that's not true. ठीक है, अब ये देखिए, ओल्ड स्कूल प्यूरिटन मॉरलाइजिंग में लिखा गया है ये लाइंस. ठीक है, वर्शिप thy power, conquer thy art, sleep not but strive, so shalt thou live, right? So again, infinite law, infinite life. So at the heart of it, as we started, remember when we even started looking at American poetry via YouTube sessions, हम लोगों ने क्या कहा था कि Anne Bradstreet जो है, she's also a person who's coming in. I'll probably come at the middle so that you'll be able to see all of this, right? She's also a person who's coming, and she's having those Puritan ethos all together. तो ये प्यूरिटैनिज्म का जो एस्पेक्ट है, ये कहीं ना कहीं रहता ही है. दैट इज व्हाट यू आर एबल टू सी over here. So even though तभी हम लोग कहते हैं कि American poets were not radically modernist, they were blending in realism. They were still तभी English, आपके जो modern poets थे, they somehow lost the battle with the common people, जो American poets didn't. Like if you read a Robert Frost, even a non-literature student can actually start reading Robert Frost. That was the key distinguishing feature between your English modern poets and American modern poets. यहाँ पर भी he is talking. Technically, the tone, the tenor is interior monologue, psychological musings of people, who are buried over there at the, at the cemetery. और यहाँ पर that's what you're able to see in the Spoon River anthology, different causes for deaths that you're able to explore. But at the heart of it, there is a reality that we can't ignore, and that reality is very simple, right? That reality is something which is very very simple altogether. I think blur nahi hai. If you're going to be seeing that, the yellow part may be the same, but otherwise you'll be able to make a note of it. Okay, just zoom it in, you'll be able to make a note of it. Or what I'll do is I'll also share, let me just also share this image on the Telegram platform also, so that you be able to actually, one second, I've just shared the image also on Telegram. You'll be able to notice that. उसको आप image को भी zoom करेंगे, सुप्रतिम, so you'll be able to see it बच्चे. ठीक है, फिर भी अगर कोई problem आ रही है तो you let me know. Good noon ज्योति, good afternoon बच्चे. Okay, now Doc Hill भी एक work है जो आपका Lee Masters का एक important work है, right? Doc Hill is also another work that you're able to see that Lee Masters is writing. I'll come over here so that you're all able to see the presentation as well. ठीक है, अब डॉक हिल क्या है? इट इज ऑफ कोर्स मेलोड्रामेटिक, राइट? जैसे स्पून रिवर एंथोलॉजी थोड़ा कंस्ट्रेंट है, कन्फेशंस आ रहे हैं. दिस इज अ लिटिल मेलोड्रामेटिक इन नेचर, राइट? सो दिस इज अ लिटिल, तभी हम लोग कह रहे हैं कि अमेरिकन पीपल, दे अमेरिकन पोएट्स, दे डिड नॉट रियली लूज द प्लॉट, दे वर स्टिल लाइफ लाइक. ऐसा नहीं है कि वो बता रहे हैं कि भाई 20th सेंचुरी बिल्कुल ही चेंज आ गया है. दैट इज व्हाट यू आर एबल टू सी. जैसे अभी भी आपको व्हाई movies. I've not seen it myself, but why some of these masala movies like Animal, etc., despite the fact that they show alpha violence, why are they so popular with people? Because we all know that it's the generation of AI, but still हमें थोड़ा सा entertainment definitely चाहिए, right? That is what we are able to largely look at. Okay, now what is it focusing on? It's focusing on good deeds that are there. अच्छा, I don't know how many of you have Catholic friends. Okay, now Catholic friends अगर आपके होंगे ना तो you'll come to know. And I remember one of our professors was also Catholic. One of my very good friends was Catholic. So Catholics में क्या होता है that you've done something bad, but what you do is you go and you visit a church, you pray in church on Sunday, and then you're wiping off all your sins basically, right? Why you're seeking pardon from God, which makes sense, of course, because you are trying to you are trying to seek forgiveness. Lekin what is ultimately is there that whatever you sow, you will have to reap that, right? No matter if you've done something bad, you will have to reap the consequences of that. अगर आप अभी दिसंबर के टाइम को यूटिलाइज नहीं करेंगे, जनवरी के टाइम को यूटिलाइज नहीं करेंगे, फेब को नहीं यूटिलाइज करेंगे, तो the thing is that it will definitely be stressful to start preparation from March onwards. That's a reality. ठीक है, तो हमेशा ये चीज आपको याद रखना है that he is trying to talk about this aspect of religion. So good deeds performed can actually try and compensating rather than just asking for forgiveness. Okay, please remember Doc, the title character who's there, he's always been afraid to sever his fruitless disastrous relationships with his wife and son. So a lot of people now, we are able to see, why do we see that the number of divorce cases are rising, or people trying to just make sure that they're disinheriting their sons and daughters from their own portfolio income. ये सारे increase हो रहे हैं because now people can take those decisions. Earlier it used to be people would not take those decisions at all. So Doc का जो character है, Doc का character, he is continuing with his relationship with his wife and the son, despite it not being a very good relationship. Okay, and Masters does not criticize or judge Doc's wife or son. That's not what is happening. He implies that the too late sorry wisdom of looking out from the grave at the firm devotion of end station. So again, he's not being very critical, but he's just trying to state कि भाई ये हो रहा है, आपको डॉग की पोजीशन पता चलती है, आपको वो वाइफ और सन कैसे बिहेव कर रहे हैं वो पता चल रहा है, but he's not judging them, right? It's not that he's saying spiteful, but it comes across that the treatment that they give to Doc is not something which is respectful, right? जैसे आर्थर मिलर के डेथ ऑफ अ सेल्समैन में क्या हो रहा है, विली लोमन के साथ किस तरह का ट्रीटमेंट हो रहा है. ही इज वर्किंग वेरी हार्ड, ही इज वांटिंग गुड फॉर हिज सन्स till the time that eventually he actually gives away his life also so that his kids can get the insurance money. लेकिन is it even worth it, right? And उस केस में डेथ ऑफ अ सेल्समैन में भी इसी तरह से डॉकिल की तरह आर्थर मिलर of course tries indirectly to show the spiteful nature of the family. या फिर लुक एट मेटामॉर्फोसिस, अभी जब हम लोग क्लासरूम क्लास में कर रहे थे फ्रांस स्टाफ का जर्मन लिटरेचर में मेटामॉर्फोसिस, तो मेटामॉर्फोसिस में हम लोगों ने क्या पढ़ा है, मेटामॉर्फोसिस में यही हम लोग देख रहे थे दैट हाउ they actually make sure that they're actually making a point to not take care of Gregor Samsa because Gregor Samsa is no more useful for them. So clearly Franz Kafka is of course not trying to be judgmental because that's not what Franz Kafka's style of writing is. He's trying to talk about bigger things, but keep on making those connections. जब तक आप connections नहीं बनाएंगे, then obviously it become a little difficult altogether. Okay, so please keep that in mind. All right. Now coming on to Robert Frost. Okay, now coming on to Robert Frost. Right, नेहा हमें थोड़ी सी मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी, हमें पढ़ना पड़ेगा. We will have to make sure that we are writing our notes all together. मैं इतना मेहनत करके I'm making the PPTs and collating the material and strategizing and planning for all of you. तो आपको थोड़ा सा बैठ के मेक श्योर कीजिए, आप एक वाईटी का सेपरेट नोटबुक बना लीजिए. उस वाईटी के सेपरेट नोटबुक में आप जो जो हम लोग करवाते हैं बच्चे रेगुलरली उसको लिखिए, इन डेप्थ और एनालिसिस कीजिए. आप ऑटोमेटिकली 3-4 महीनों में बहुत बड़ा डिफरेंस अपने आप में पाएंगे. ठीक है, ओके. सो रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट, सो आई होप द टू वर्क्स दैट वी लुक्ड एट, स्पून रिवर एंथोलॉजी एंड डॉग हिल. ठीक है, स्पून रिवर एंथोलॉजी एंड डॉग हिल किसने लिखे हैं? स्पून रिवर एंथोलॉजी एंड डॉग हिल लिखे हैं एडगर ली मास्टर्स ने लिखा है. Edgar Lee Masters is an American 20th century poet who's known for talking about the psychological aspects via interior monologues, and he's one of the neglected people, right? He's one of the neglected neglected people altogether. Even आपका अभी जैसे मैं आपको थर्ड राइटर जो कराऊंगी उसमें मैं आपको हिल्डा टू लिटिल के बारे में भी थोड़ा सा और बताऊंगी, but you know he was of course the neglected one. So I hope you'll remember Doc Hill and Spoon River anthology. Okay, now Robert Frost, of course, he's received the Pulitzer 4 times. We're able to see that, you know, he won the prestigious Pulitzer Prize for poetry in 1924. So 1924, 31, 37, and 43. So, you know, he was winning it 4 times, 31, 37, 43. And, you know, a sad series of years altogether, because after that there were a lot of these deaths that had actually taken place in Robert Frost's career altogether. But what are you able to see whenever we look at the figure of Robert Frost, whenever we are talking about Robert Frost, he's of course created an entire new, an entire new kind of poetry that not just Americans, but, you know, worldwide people actually gave him a lot of acclaim, gave him a lot of support altogether. इनके time chronotopes भी please याद रखिएगा so that you will be able to situate him. He lived very longer. So 1874, 1874, 1874 to 1963. Please remember that as well. Now, what are we able to see कि इनके जो works हैं ये rural life, right? ये rural life जो आपका न्यू इंग्लैंड में आ रहा था. Remember conversations between old England and New England? कौन लिख रहा है? You can put it in the comment section. Conversations between New England and Old England, and Bradstreet लिख रही है. I hope you can recollect that. Okay. And when we are looking at the Pulitzer also 4 times, we are able to see that he's actually becoming a public literary figure. People are calling him, people are inviting him. So he is literally a public literary figure that is there. इनको prizes भी मिल रहे हैं. And please remember, he's called a New England poet. ठीक है? He was called a New England poet altogether. अच्छा, इनका जो first, right? इनका जो first poem था वो कौन सा था? The Butterfly. ये इस तरह के questions भी कभी-कभी important poets के लिए आते हैं. You can keep that in mind. Butterfly and Elegy. Butterfly and Elegy जो था, this was coming in 1894. Okay, so that was of course there. And इनका जो first book of poetry है, that is also something where questions have largely come. What is the first book that was sold? The Butterfly and Elegy. That is something that he had sold. And इनका first book of poetry क्या है? You can put it also. First book of poetry is A Boy's Will. ये फर्स्ट पॉइंट होता है. कोई भी बुक आप रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट पे उठाते हो तो फर्स्ट पोएट्री कलेक्शन इनका क्या है? अ बॉयज विल जो है, ठीक है. नॉर्थ ऑफ बॉस्टन भी इन्होंने लिखा था 1914 के अंदर. एंड प्लीज रिमेंबर that you know he was actually friends, of course he was friends with Ezra Pound, he was friends with T.E. Hulme. Hulme has played a very important role in the development of imagism, because Hulme ही है जो imagism को इंस्पायर करे. तो इनके फ्रेंड्स कौन कौन थे? इनके फ्रेंड्स थे ह्यूल्म, इनके फ्रेंड्स थे एजरा पाउंड. ठीक है, एजरा पाउंड वाज आल्सो हिज फ्रेंड. एंड प्लीज डोंट फॉरगेट ओवर हियर, बिकॉज़ वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट हिज फ्रेंड्स, he was also friends with Edward Thomas. Now who is Edward Thomas? एडवर्ड थॉमस कौन है? यहाँ पर प्लीज एक पॉइंट और एक कॉन्सेप्ट आप याद रखिएगा. एडवर्ड थॉमस इज अ डायमॉक पोएट. ठीक है, ये कॉन्सेप्ट आप लिख लीजिए, क्वेश्चन आपके एग्जाम में आ सकता है. हु वाज एडवर्ड थॉमस? ही वाज अ डायमॉक पोएट. डायमॉक क्या है? देयर वर अ ग्रुप ऑफ अर्ली सेंचुरी पोएट्स, ठीक है, जिन्होंने डायमॉक को अपना घर बना लिया था. देयर वाज ग्लॉचेस्टरशायर विलेज डायमॉक में था. और ये कौन कौन पोएट्स हैं जो डायमॉक पोएट्स हैं? रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट इज अ डायमॉक पोएट. ठीक है, जैसे मतलब आप एक जगह पे चले गए और आपने वहां पर जैसे वो है ना अभिषेक उपमान्यु जो आपका कॉमेडियन है, तो बताता है कि मेरा फर्स्ट जॉब जो लगा था वो भटिंडा में लगा था. भटिंडा में आई थिंक एक जगह का नाम वो बताता है. तो वहां के लोग तलवंडी गांव, आई थिंक समथिंग लाइक दैट है ना. तो अगर आप वहां पर हो, आप वहां पे आपने कम्युनिटी बना दी है, तो उसी से आपका नाम आ गया है. तो डायमॉक पोएट्स, ठीक है, डायमॉक पोएट्स आ जाते हैं. इसमें आपका रूपर्ट ब्रूक भी आ रहा है, राइट. योर रूपर्ट ब्रूक, रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट, एडवर्ड थॉमस जो फ्रॉस्ट के फ्रेंड भी थे, ठीक है, जॉन ड्रिंक वाटर, ये सारे के सारे आ रहे हैं. जॉन ड्रिंक वाटर, ठीक है. सो प्लीज रिमेंबर द कॉन्सेप्ट, प्लीज रिमेंबर द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ डायमॉक पोएट्री. डायमॉक पोएट्स कौन है? डायमॉक पोएट्स आर a group of poets like Rupert Brooke, like John Drinkwater, like Edward Thomas, like Robert Frost. They are all coming together, right? These are all people who are having, this is a literary group all together who were meeting at Diamok, right? They were there at Diamok and they're famously called as Diamok poets. ठीक है. So please इसको याद रखना. अच्छा, रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट इज हैविंग अ वेरी colloquial स्टाइल ऑफ राइटिंग. आम बोलचाल जैसे आप और मैं बोलते हैं, आप और मैं कमेंट्स लिख रहे हैं, राइट? सो व्हाट आर वी एबल टू सी, यू विल बी एबल. सोनी बच्चे, मैंने पहले ही बहुत बार बोल चुकी हूँ कि अगर आपको कोई भी हेल्प चाहिए, ठीक है, कोई भी आपको हेल्प चाहिए, आपने मुझे क्या करना है, आपने मेरे को ईमेल डालना है, आपने सब्जेक्ट में बता दीजिएगा या कमेंट सेक्शन में भी आप लिख लीजिए. मैं कमेंट्स को बहुत अच्छी तरह से हर एक वीडियो के एंड में जो जो आप कमेंट्स लिखते हैं उनके पॉपअप्स को मैं अच्छी तरह से देखती हूँ. और मुझे कमेंट सेक्शन में भी लिख सकते हैं या आप मुझे ईमेल कर लीजिए. ये मैं बहुत बार बता भी रही हूँ. किसी भी एग्जाम के लिए अगर आपको हेल्प चाहिए तो neerja.raheja.faculty@testbook.com, @testbook.com. ठीक है, स्पेलिंग्स बिल्कुल सही रखना. NEERJA.RAHEJA.faculty, फैकल्टी की स्पेलिंग्स ठीक रखना. ठीक है, @testbook.com पे आप मुझे बता देना. तो जो जो आपका है MPPCS असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर चाहिए तो, और उसका हो सके तो प्लीज मुझे सिलेबस भी भेज देना. वैसे तो आजकल सब ऑनलाइन मिल जाता है सिलेबस के नजरिए से, बट स्टिल आप मुझे उसका सिलेबस भी भेज दीजिएगा और लिख दीजिएगा ऊपर सब्जेक्ट लाइन में ना, आप वाईटी या कुछ ऐसा लिख दीजिएगा एंड आई विल रिमेंबर. ठीक है. सो डोंट वरी एट ऑल, क्योंकि अभी आपकी बहुत सारी क्लासेस है, जैसे मंडे टू फ्राइडे तो हम मिल ही रहे हैं, उसमें तो हम मिल ही रहे हैं 10:30 PM, बट ओवर एंड अबव भी जो हम लोग कर रहे हैं वी विल टॉक अबाउट इट. ठीक है. तो इनका जो कोलोकियल स्टाइल ऑफ राइटिंग था उसको साउंड ऑफ सेंस बोला जाता था. उसको क्या कहा जाता था? उसको साउंड ऑफ सेंस बोला जाता था. तो अगेन, व्हाट आर द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट्स बिफोर वी गो अ लिटिल फर्दर एंड टॉक अ लिटिल मोर अबाउट हिम. 1874 टू 1963 इनके फ्रेंड्स कौन कौन थे? आपके डायमॉक पोएट्स, टी.ई. ह्यूल्म, एजरा पाउंड. डायमॉक पोएट्स और कौन कौन है? रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट, रूपर्ट ब्रूक, जॉन ड्रिंक वाटर, एडवर्ड थॉमस. जो डायमॉक में एक लिटरेरी ग्रुप आपका बन गया था. ठीक है. अ बॉयज विल इनकी फर्स्ट पोएट्री कलेक्शन है. द बटरफ्लाई इनका फर्स्ट इंपॉर्टेंट वर्क है जिन्होंने इसको सोल्ड भी किया था. ही वन द पुलित्जर 4 times, 24, 31, 37, 43, right? And he's of course a poet who is known, he said my poetry is sound of words, colloquial style of writing, that is what he talks about. Okay, now moving on, what are you able to see? इनके एक एक वर्क को यहाँ पर थोड़ा सा अच्छी तरह से देखना है. I'll just try to make myself a little smaller so that you'll be able to see it. Yeah. Okay. Now, when we are talking about the Pasteur, ठीक है. Now, please remember, इनको जो अपना first Pulitzer मिल रहा है, वो first Pulitzer 1924 में किस book की वजह से मिल रहा है? न्यू हैम्पशायर की वजह से मिल रहा है, right? And then there were of course witness tree की वजह से fourth Pulitzer मिलता है. तो ये भी आप थोड़ा सा please याद रखना. Okay. अच्छा, एक क्वेश्चन आपका एग्जाम में पूछा जाता है कि रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट का जो एपिटाफ है, जो एपिटाफ है उसमें कहाँ से लाइंस ली गई हैं? उसमें एपिटाफ में रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट की ही पोएट्री, राइट, यानी कि जो पोयम है द लेसन फॉर टुडे, ये कब आ रही है? द लेसन फॉर टुडे कब आ रहा है? 1942 में लिया है. I had a lover's quarrel with the world. That means you obviously love the world, but you also have problems with the world. ठीक है. तो यहाँ पर जो इनका एपिटाफ है, I had a lover's quarrel. I had a lover's quarrel with the world. I had a lover's quarrel with the world. I had a lover's quarrel with the world. Right? तो ये वाला भी आप प्लीज थोड़ा सा ध्यान रखिएगा. I had a lover's quarrel with the world. That is what you were able to see. So please keep that in mind that he's getting America on the poetic map. He's making American poetry simplified altogether. Pasteur is of course one of the poems. Now what really happens over here is कि Pasteur जो आपका 1913 में आ रहा है, 1913 में आपका कौन सी पोएट्री कलेक्शन आ रही है? बॉयज विल जो आपका आ रहा है. अच्छा, बॉयज विल का टाइटल कहाँ से लिया गया है? लॉन्गफेलो की पोएम माई लॉस्ट यूथ. माई लॉस्ट यूथ वहां से लिया गया है। और बॉयज विल का इंट्रोडक्शन किसने दिया है? एजरा पाउंड ने दिया है। बॉयज विल का इंट्रोडक्शन किसने दिया है? एजरा पाउंड ने दिया है। पास्टर्स जो आपका 1913 में आ रहा है, what are you able to see that you know the homeowners country shores, the country shores, मैंने आपको स्टार्टिंग में ही बता दिया था, most of the poems that we are reading of Robert Frost, they are all having a little rustic rural setting altogether. Okay, farm surroundings, ठीक है, he's telling you farmers point of view, he's using easy iambic pentameter. हम लोगों ने क्या कहा था, वो ऑक्सफोर्ड कंपेनियन टू अमेरिकन पोएट्री में most of these American poets are shunning iambic pentameter, right? अच्छा, मैं आपके लिए बहुत ही बढ़िया सा नेक्स्ट वीक बहुत ही बढ़िया यूट्यूब पे जो सीरीज आ रही है जिसमें मैं आपके साथ पोएट्री करने वाली हूँ और बहुत रिच रिसोर्सेस को यूज करके चाहे वो सदरलैंड्स की बुक हो या आपका डीके की पोएट्री कलेक्शन हो, so a lot of these books that we've curated together and we've created content for you on poetry that will really be very helpful for you. वो भी आपका आ जाएगा, ठीक है? ग्रेट सोनी, नाइस बच्चे, थैंक्स सो मच। तो फार्मर्स पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू है, रूरल है, तो ये लुक एट दिस लाइक simple style, sound of the sense. This is what he was talking about. My verse is sound of the sense, right? Sound of the sense, simplitude altogether, easy iambic pentameter. ठीक है? He of course इनका जो diction था 7 contradictions in 8 lines, simple, ordinary, earth centered fellow के लिए है, masculine end sounds है, लेकिन by and large what are you able to see? You are able to see that the kind of writing that Robert Frost actually brings across, it's very simple. ठीक है? अच्छा, एक ना काफी डिफरेंट सा क्वेश्चन रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट पे जो हाल ही में देखने को मिला है, रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट इज ऑल्सो राइटिंग प्लेज, प्लीज डोंट फॉरगेट दैट। रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट आपके क्या लिख रहे हैं? रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट इज ऑल्सो राइटिंग योर प्लेज। कौन कौन से प्लेज रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट ने लिखे हैं? ही हैज रिटन अ मास्क ऑफ रीजन एंड अ मास्क ऑफ मर्सी, ठीक है? अ मास्क ऑफ रीजन एंड अ मास्क ऑफ मर्सी, मास्क ऑफ रीजन 1945 में आ रहा है। इट इज लाइक मिल्टन्स पैराडाइज लॉस्ट, 42 चैप्टर्स के अंदर डिवाइडेड है, एंड मास्क फॉर मर्सी इज देयर। अच्छा, अब आपका क्वेश्चन कैसे आ सकता है इन दोनों के ऊपर? मास्क ऑफ मर्सी इज बेस्ड ऑन जॉन मिल्टन्स पैराडाइज रीगेन्ड, whereas मास्क ऑफ रीजन इज बेस्ड ऑन जॉन मिल्टन्स पैराडाइज लॉस्ट। ठीक है, ये इजी हो जाएगा आपके लिए याद रखना। आपने इसको क्या कैसे याद रखना है? आपने याद रखना है मास्क ऑफ रीजन पैराडाइज लॉस्ट से थोड़ा सा इंस्पायर्ड है, और दिस इज बेस्ड ऑन पैराडाइज रीगेन्ड बाय जॉन मिल्टन। आई होप यू विल बी एबल टू रिमेंबर दैट। इसके अलावा द काउज इन द कॉर्न, अ वे आउट, ये सब भी इन्होंने प्लीज लिखे हैं, लेकिन क्वेश्चंस आपके कैसे आ सकते हैं? मास्क ऑफ रीजन से आ सकते हैं और मास्क ऑफ मर्सी से आ सकते हैं। सो प्लीज रिमेंबर दैट एज वेल, that despite, yes, very good Aziz, very good. Eugene O'Neill is also very important American dramatist, right? And he's also getting the Pulitzer. So here Robert Frost getting it 4 times. Mask of Mercy, Mask of Reason, 2 plays that he's writing. Pastors is of course coming in. Okay, so please keep that in mind because all of these are of course important. Mending Wall, I think ऐसा बहुत ही रेयरली कोई होगा जिसने मेंडिंग वॉल नहीं पढ़ी होगी, राइट? मोस्टली सबके सिलेबसेस में भी थी, और ये मैं आपको टिप भी दे रही थी कि आपकी जब भी आपके पास फ्री टाइम होता है एनसीईआरटी पोएट्री को खोलिए, कैसे कैसे देखिए कि 4th 5th 6th 6th 7th 8th 9th 10th जो आपके हैं उसमें कौन कौन से पोएट्स को दे रखा है, क्योंकि वो पोएट्स आपके सेट एग्जाम्स में पक्का आ रहे हैं आजकल, ठीक है? नाउ व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट पोएम्स लाइक मेंडिंग वॉल, ठीक है, सी ऑफ कोर्स आपके नेट में स्टॉपिंग बाय द वुड्स ऑन अ स्नोई इवनिंग, राइट? स्टॉपिंग ऑन अ वुड्स इन अ स्नोई इवनिंग, इजी लाइंस दे रखी हैं, ठीक है? इजी लाइंस दे रखी हैं। ये क्वेश्चन आपका पूछा भी जाता है बाय द वे, न्यू हैम्पशायर के अंदर आया था। न्यू हैम्पशायर इज अटैकिंग, देखो ही वाज अटैकिंग अमेरिकास कमर्शलाइजेशन, ग्रोइंग अर्बनाइजेशन, उसको ये एक तरह से बोलते हैं। सो आपका जो न्यू हैम्पशायर है, राइट, ये भी आप ये पॉइंट प्लीज याद रखिएगा। व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट योर न्यू हैम्पशायर, व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट योर न्यू हैम्पशायर के अंदर सिंपल वर्क व्हिच इज क्रिटिसाइजिंग मटीरियलिज्म, which is criticizing commercialization altogether, उसके अंदर आपका आ रहा है stopping by woods, right? उसके अंदर आपका आ रहा है stopping by woods on a snowy evening, stopping by woods on a snowy evening, ठीक है? और ये आपका क्या कर रहा है? Please remember that it was written in tetrameter, एडवर्ड फिट्जजेराल्ड का जो रुबायत है, Edward Fitzgerald, मैंने आपको last time भी बताया था, lot of these writers were getting inspired because that was a little romantic way of writing altogether. Romantic not in that way, but a different style of writing altogether. So tetrameter जो रुबायत stanzas के अंदर लिखा गया है, right? So what are you able to see that your tetrameter that is used, the tetrameter जो आपका रुबायत के अंदर यूज हुआ है, right? Tetrameter जो आपका रुबायत के अंदर यूज हुआ है by Edward Fitzgerald, the romantic age writers. So that is what you are able to see, ठीक है? So please keep that in mind. Yeah, the question आया भी हुआ है. Remember the most beautiful lines. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. And that is so true. Now, as 2023 is coming to an end, there is of course miles to go for our journey to make sure that all of you becoming assistant professors, all of you are taking charge of your careers, right, in a proper manner. So that is of course there. Okay. And by the way, ये जो last four lines है ना, they inspired our first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru as well, right? So Nehru was inspired by these lines. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep, right? Now, of course, Mending Wall 1914 में आपका आ रहा है, Boysville 1913. I hope it is clear to all of you. Frost had visited the Scottish Highlands altogether. ठीक है, देखो mundane observation तो of course हैं, mundane observations तो of course हैं, right? Now look at it. जो Frost का next door landowner है, Frost French Canadian neighbor, Napoleon guy, ठीक है? Now what are you basically able to see that Mending Walls actually trying to highlight your most common concerns आजकल, like yesterday what had happened is, yesterday I visited my mom's house, and there they were talking about, like there was a really cute dog that came in, उसका बेचारे का ना एक eye भी नहीं चल रहा था. So when we talk about so many foundations like the Hemkund foundations trying to tell you कि भाई आइए dog shelter houses लेके जाइए, and give the shelter houses in cold, because it's genuinely very cold in some parts now, especially at night. Okay. Now I wanted to give them food, and both my mom and my brother, they said no, we can't give food, otherwise somebody will click our photos and they'll put it on the WhatsApp group of the society, right? And then they were telling me that how some of the neighbors were partying at loud music, etc. They were completely banned. So again ये आजकल भी होता है, हम लोग कितना सुनते हैं कि पार्किंग की वजह से लोगों ने एक दूसरे को गोलियां मार दी, etc. So these neighborhood fights which are there, whereas the Bible has a different thing to talk about neighbors. So Mending Walls is clearly trying to talk about it. Sometimes there is that does not love a wall, right? Good fences make good neighbors altogether. So it's trying to literally bring forth a very interesting topic which is so relevant even today, right? So that is what you're largely able to see. Good fences, remember, good fences make good neighbors. So Mending Walls again are trying to talk about a very simple imagery that is brought forward. इसको थोड़ा सा पढ़िएगा भी आज भी जाके, if you can read the pasture, farmers point of view, simple language, rustic, अभी road not taken, I'll be telling you, just revisit all of these, right? Just revisit all of these, right? So please keep that in mind. Mending Walls of course coming in. Mending Wall, अच्छा Mending Wall कहाँ पे था? It is second collection of poetry north of Boston. ये 1914 से आपको हिंट मिल जानी चाहिए थी. नॉर्थ ऑफ बॉस्टन में मेंडिंग वॉल आ रहा है. मेंडिंग वॉल कहाँ पे आ रहा है? आपको मैच द फॉलोइंग दे सकते हैं कि आपको मैच करना है पोएट्री और वो कौन से पोएट्री कलेक्शन में आ रही है, तो यू शुड रिमेंबर दैट. ओके. होम बरियल इज आल्सो वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग. आई कम दिस साइड सो दैट ऑल ऑफ यू विल बी एबल टू सी इट आल्सो. ठीक है. होम बरियल इज आल्सो समथिंग व्हिच इज वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग, अ वर्ड कॉल्ड टुगेदर 1914. ठीक है. टाइटल इज ऑफ कोर्स बोथ अ home graveyard that you're talking about, the household buried in unrequited grief altogether, that you're able to see, let me into your grief, right? So again, husband is asking his wife, let me into your grief. Okay. Again, this was also reference to Eleanor's Frost devastation and the death of son Elliot. There were these bereavements that the Frostian family had actually seen it. Okay. And ये जो है, husband responds to his mournful wife's inability to cope with the death of their child, right? And he is trying to put up this cover. Even he is sad, even he is grief stricken, but he's trying to show that okay, I have to attend to business, and therefore my period of mourning is not going to be as much as yours. Home burial again. यहाँ पर compare it to Henry Lawson, the Australian short story writer, talking about the drover's wife. आपको ये सारी चीजें पता चलती है that simple, these are not heroic things. This is not the grief that may be, a Patroclus की death में, right? This may not be the grief that, grief and agitation that Patroclus की death पे you are able to see Achilles is feeling in the Iliad. This may not be the grief on Hector's death that is experienced by his father Priam. This may not be that sort of a heroic grief that, you are fighting and then you are actually losing your life. This is simple grief that we're talking about that is experienced, and it's even more depressing, and or rather comparable to the losses, or the grief that was experienced by Achilles and Priam respectively. तो आप ये चीज देख पाते हो कि दैट इज द ब्यूटी ऑफ दीज 20th सेंचुरी पीपल ऑल टुगेदर. गुड आफ्टरनून मोनिका, गुड आफ्टरनून. ठीक है, सो प्लीज कीप दैट इन माइंड एज वेल दैट होम burial, talking about how, and trying to also show you a little bit of autobiographical element that is coming in. So pasture, mending wall, good fences make good neighbors, home burial is coming in, death of a hired man written in 1914, wife is pits wife and husband in confrontation over infirmity and self-esteem. So simple topics that are chosen, simple topics that you and I would be experiencing all together. ठीक है, मैरी वॉरेन टिप्टो, ये मैंने आपको बताया भी था. डोमेस्टिक फ्यूड्स हम लोगों ने टीएस एलियट के केस में भी किया था. Remember when we were talking about the family reunion, when we were talking about the plays of T.S. Eliot in the last class of YouTube itself, this is what we were discussing about it कि कैसे आपका domestic feuds and battles, right? Power plays उसके अंदर कैसे play out होते हैं. We said Edward Albee का Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, or when we were talking about, John Osborne's called Look Back in Anger. So all of these works, this is what they're trying to tell you. I hope you're clear about it, right? Yes, absolutely right. Basically, the collapse of the fourth wall, as we say, right? The collapse of the fourth wall, as you're able to see. Okay, so please remember that. Mary, who shelters tender feelings, she wants Warren to lower his voice, right? To spare Silas the insult of Warren's disdain for him altogether. So again, how you're trying to create a facade in front of your kids. You really don't want your kids to actually remember that. Okay, so death of a hired man is there. अच्छा, by the way ना, ये आप प्लीज याद रखिएगा कि नॉर्थ ऑफ बॉस्टन के अंदर ये सारे आ रहे हैं. ठीक है, ये आप लिख भी सकते हो, ये डेथ ऑफ अ हायर्ड मैन, क्योंकि 1914 में, इसलिए आपको क्लियर ही हो जाना चाहिए था 1914. सो बॉयज विल 1913, नॉर्थ ऑफ बॉस्टन 1914. अभी आपको क्लास में ये याद हो जाना चाहिए था. तो नॉर्थ ऑफ बॉस्टन आपका जो है, नॉर्थ ऑफ बॉस्टन 1914 जो आपका आ रहा है, ड्रामेटिक मोनोलॉग्स, डायलॉग्स हैं इसके अंदर, राइट? सो दिस इज व्हाट यू आर एबल टू लार्जली सी. ठीक है, सो प्लीज रिमेंबर दैट. And here, what are we able to see? Pasture. अच्छा, by the way, North of Boston का introductory poem क्या है? North of Boston का introductory poem है Pasture. Pasture is the introductory poem, followed by Mending Wall. Mending Wall is again the story from the rural place altogether. ठीक है, something there is that doesn't love a wall. Something there is that doesn't love a wall. Remember, that is what you were able to see. So Mending Wall भी इसी के अंदर आ रहा है. Death of a hired man इसी के अंदर आ रहा है. Okay, so आपका Death of a hired man इसी के अंदर आ रहा है. And then your After Apple Picking, that is also very very popular, right? After Apple Picking, which is trying to talk about sleep dreaming. It's trying to talk about sleep dreaming altogether. This is what you're largely able to see. ठीक है, so north of Boston 1914 में Pasture, Mending Wall, Death of a Hired Man, the husband and wife, and how they're just trying to ensure Mary and Warren का जो relationship है, that is something that you're clearly able to see, and how Mary doesn't want Warren to speak in a particular tone in front of others altogether. Okay, now the most beautiful and epic work that we are able to see, I'm sure all of you have either read it or you would have quoted it. हम लोग remember when we used to write essays, etc., we were all quoting this entire work, and a beautiful work indeed that is, right? The Road Not Taken. The Road Not Taken, by the way, ये कहाँ पर आ रही है? Mountain Interval में आ रहा है. ये कौन से collection में आ रही है? Mountain Interval. Mountain Interval आपके collection में आ रही है 1916 altogether. And please remember that this is the first poem. The Road Not Taken is actually the first poem that you were able to see that was coming in as a part of Mountain Interval. इंटरवल, द पोएट्री कलेक्शन। तो अभी तक हम लोगों ने बॉयज विल 1913 किया है। नॉर्थ ऑफ बॉस्टन में we've looked at pasture, we've looked at works like, even after apple picking, which is talking about sleep dreaming. We've also looked at how you're able to see that, mending walls also part of north of Boston. So ये सारी चीजें आपको थोड़ी सी ध्यान में रखनी पड़ेंगी। And of course we've spoken about how death of a hired man, which is telling about Mary and Warren, is also there. ठीक है। Now the road not taken 1916, which is coming in. ठीक है। 1916. Now he was trying to make a choice whether I should go for farming or publishing. Okay, whether you should go for farming or publishing. So there are two woods that you're able to see, two choices that you are having. So he was actually over here trying to make this choice, trying to make this call altogether between farming and publishing. Between farming and publishing. So story poem hai, life altering resolutions, okay, that you're able to see. Remember the most famous lines, two roads diverged in yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. That is the reality. These days people do travel both also. Hi Anna, good afternoon bache. Yes, Shilpa saying I read it. Yes, very good. I'm so glad all of you have read it all together. Okay, so please keep that in mind that he is of course trying to talk about his own dilemma that he was experiencing. Okay, so ये first poem थी Mountain Interval Collection में। जैसे वहां पर Pasture is the first poem, North of Boston का first poem क्या है? Pasture है। आपका Mountain Interval के अंदर first poem कौन सा है? The Road Not Taken. Okay. Now, of course, Birches is also equally an important and interesting work that you're able to see. All right, Birches comes in. Birches is also equally an important work that is coming in. Now, what all do we have to keep in mind when we are looking at Birches? देखो, Birches 1969 में eventually आपका publish हो रहा है. Very important work that you will largely able to see. Earth's the right place for love. Remember the most famous lines. Earth's the best place for love. Most famous lines. Earth's the best place for love. He's very clear. Earth's the best place for love, right? Those are the most famous lines that you're able to see in the birches, right? Remember, when I see birches bend to left and right across the line, straighter, darker trees, I like to think of some boys being swinging them, and then it of course continues. Okay, please remember, of course, it's there in your 1916 collection of mountain interval. आपका birches आपका आ रहा है. So that is what you're able to see. Now, when we are talking about the birches, it is a fanciful monologue. The poem speaker, expresses as twin-like nostalgia of a carefree boyhood, tree climbing, right? Carefree boyhood, tree climbing that you're able to see. This is something that is spoken about by others also. So tree climbing. 59-line poem. It's trying to tell you about the memory altogether. Bent trees, jog the poet's recall of a boy's mischievous with normal pastime, the childhood fancy altogether, how you were spending time. So that was like, tween-like reality that you're able to look at. Okay. Speaker is also noting the ice storms that have the same effect on the birches. Okay. Pura ka pura hai. Look at these lines. Truth broke in with all her matter and fact. Okay. So again, the tree climbing episodes altogether, you can actually revisit birches as well. Okay. Yes, absolutely right, absolutely right. So birches is also a part. Birches is also a really important part that you're able to see. ये भी mountain interval के अंदर आ रहा है. So mountain interval में road not taken आ रहा है. So north of Boston 1914, Boysville 1913, 1916 में आपका क्या आ रहा है? 1916 में आपका mountain interval आ रहा है, poetry collection, and इसके अंदर आपका birches आ रहा है. ठीक है, इसी के अंदर आपका birches आ रहा है. Again, very important word which has come so many times, stopping by woods on a snowy evening. Like I told you, this particular work is written in tetrameter. ठीक है, ये जो आपका work है which is written in tetrameter. So it is using tetrameter. It is using tetrameter, which was also used by Edward Fitzgerald in Rubaiyat. Rubaiyat के अंदर you are able to see, this is the Rubaiyat stanza, right? Your Rubaiyat stanza is something which is being used over here. Your Rubaiyat stanza is being used over here. Please remember that. Stopping by the woods on a snowy evening. Stopping by the woods on a snowy evening. Okay. So please keep that in mind. Stopping by the woods on a snowy evening. very important work. Acha. By the way, it's considered to be best bid for remembrance. Best bid for remembrance. So Frost himself said, "Okay, I will be remembered by this particular work altogether." And like I told you, remember the most famous lines that we are able to see over here, right? Which even inspired Jawaharlal Nehru, like I was telling you. So, what are the most famous lines that are coming across? What are the most famous lines? The woods are lovely. The woods are lovely. The woods are lovely, lovely, dark and deep. Lovely, dark and deep. I don't know whether this color is visible. Lovely, dark and deep. I'll probably use another color altogether. So the woods are lovely, dark and deep. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, right? But I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep and miles to go before I sleep. And therefore, he said, this is my best bid for remembrance, right? This is my best bid for remembrance. Rhyme scheme is A, B, A, B, B, C, B, C, C, D, C, D, 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 D. Okay, and Pastor की तरह of course है. See, simplicity is always there, right? The auditory sounds that are there, simplicity is always definitely there. So stopping by woods on a snowy evening, that's of course coming in. So stopping by woods on a snowy evening, please remember that that is also important. Just stopping by woods on a snowy evening किसका part है? It is a part of New Hampshire. ठीक है, ये कौन से आपकी पोट्री कलेक्शन का पार्ट है? This is a part of New Hampshire. Okay, so this is a part of New Hampshire that was coming in 1923. New Hampshire that was coming in 1923. It criticized the materialism, the materialization, materialism, excessive materialism and commercialization of America. तो ये आपका New Hampshire में आ रहा है. Best bid for remembrance. Best bid for remembrance. This is what you are able to see. ठीक है. Okay, and of course, departmental, the end of my angry Annie Jerry, the end of my Annie Jerry. I'll just come on over here so that you'll be able to see this in a better manner. This is, of course, the one of the last works that we are actually looking at for Robert Frost over here. Departmental, the end of my Aunt Jerry. ये एक annual fable है. It was composed when Robert Frost was 62 years old, and the title has been taken from Departmental Ditties by Rudyard Kipling. Remember, Love Song of G. Alfred Prufrock is also taken from Kipling's Love Song of Hardayal. That is what we had talked about in the last class. So poetry of T.S. Eliot, मैंने उसका PDF भेज दिया था. I hope आपने उसको skim through definitely कर लिया है, and you will be able to remember those things that we spoke about. Okay. So what are you able to see that this particular title that is coming in, the title is inspired from Kipling is writing your departmental ditties. Departmental ditties जो आपका Kipling लिख रहे हैं उससे इंस्पायर्ड है. ठीक है. एंड एनिमल फेबल तो है ही है. मौखिक वे ऑफ राइटिंग है. And selfless forager. Now what are you basically able to see? Jerry, a victim, or Jerry becomes a victim of bureaucratic blummers. ठीक है. And what are you able to largely see? You're largely able to see that again, very same theme that is there in Kafka, but Kafka has got a Kafkaesque style of writing. He's got a little, a little above, so he'll go into the sublime realm and talk about. But you're able to see Robert Frost had a very simple style of writing, right? He had a very very simple style of writing altogether. Okay, so that is another important thing that you're able to see. So departmental, the end of my Annie Jerry. This is of course another important work that he's actually written, and written when he was 62 years old. I've already told you Mask of Reason, Mask of Mercy, Mask of Reason 1945, Mask of Mercy 1947. और कैसे influenced है? Mask of Reason Paradise Lost से inspired है. Mask of Mercy is inspired by Paradise Regained. Now coming on to another important figure, when the third poet for today that we are having, that is Annie Lowell. And whenever we are talking about people like Annie Lowell, it becomes very important and interesting for all of us to remember कि ये जो आपका American poetry है इसमें Ezra Pound की क्या importance है. Of course Ezra Pound को हम लोग differently we will be looking at, right? But what are you able to see? You are able to see that a lot of other poets are coming, like HD. ठीक है. So what are you able to see that poets like Hilda Doolittle, okay? ये सारे के सारे poets को भी समझना in this particular context context actually becomes important. Why is a Hilda Doolittle important? Because Hilda Doolittle, the American poet, is also associated with the avant-garde imagist movement, that even you are able to see that there are certain parallels. So even though Amy Lowell is a little different, and we'll talk about Amy Lowell, but we'll also see how imagism is an inspiration over here. तो ये भी चीज हमें यहाँ पर याद रखनी है. Okay. ओके, कंट्री इज वेरी रेगुलर, ही इज वेरी रेगुलर, और आपको इंटरनेट का यूज करना पड़ेगा मोर देन बुक्स. आपको इंटरनेट का यूज करना पड़ेगा बच्चे. यू हैव टू बी अ लिटिल मोर अलाइव टू ऑल ऑफ दीस थिंग्स. आई रिमेंबर 2 to 3 of the students लास्ट टाइम जब उनका जेआरएफ हुआ था, तो वी वर इंटरव्यूइंग एंड दे सेड नेट टू नेट, लाइक अगर आप नेट क्लियर करना चाहते हैं, यू नीड इंटरनेट फॉर दैट इज समथिंग व्हिच इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. सो प्लीज रिमेंबर दैट. Okay. All right, and he's very regular. I don't think I've ever seen Devashish miss any. अगर वो I think मैं कोई live class भी करूँगी ना Instagram वगैरह पे, उसमें भी बेचारा आ जाता है. He's very regular. He's super regular and very active. So please be a little more careful. Okay. All right, but good job done, Devashish. Huh? All right. So HT is also a person who's coming in. HT is also writing, and Ezra Pound, HT, both of them together, they were comrades. Images Manifesto भी आपका आ रहा है. HT को हम separately भी we will be talking about it. Now, when we are talking about Annie Lowell, of course, like I said, is associated with imagism as well. Okay, is associated with imagism as well. All right, was of course a lecturer, a conversationalist altogether. Now, what has happened over here is that the kind of writings, ठीक है, अभी हम लोग देखेंगे, we'll talk about works like Patterns, Sister also. This is trying to tell you that poetry is not the realm. Poetry is not the realm of men itself. Poetry is also a realm where women can also be there. Okay, so that is another important aspect that you're able to see, that Amy Lowell, the third poet for today. So we started by looking at Doc Hale's writer, or the Spoon River anthologies writer, Edgar Lee Masters. Okay, then we moved on to Robert Frost, and then we covered A Boy's Will, North of Boston, or even for that matter, abhi just say we were looking at New Hampshire, or the other collections that were coming in, and they were being written by Robert Frost, who's getting the Pulitzer 4 times, and simple, plain, rural, rustic style of writing that he's having. Uske baad, we are coming on to a person who brought a new movement in American poetry, and that new movement is imagism. That new movement is associated with imagism altogether. So please keep that in mind. Please remember that. What are you largely able to look at? What are you largely able to see over here is that imagism was a very different style of writing that wanted to compress everything. ये एक एवनकार्ड स्टाइल ऑफ राइटिंग है, और ये आपके एग्जाम में काफी बार पूछा भी जाता है दैट व्हाट आर द फीचर्स ऑफ दिस एवनकार्ड स्टाइल ऑफ राइटिंग. आप इसका स्क्रीनशॉट भी ले सकते हैं टू जस्ट रिमेंबर दैम, इवन दो हम लोगों ने थोड़ा थोड़ा करके वी हैड आल्सो डिस्कस्ड इट प्रीवियसली अभी ही. ठीक है, सो सम इमेजिस्ट पोएट्स, राइट, व्हिच वाज trying to also tell you about what are the important do's and don'ts of writing imagist poetry. By the way, we will be talking about, जब हम हिल्डा डू लिटिल को सेपरेटली पढ़ेंगे, आई टेल यू अबाउट द इमेजिस्ट मैनिफेस्टो, कैसे आपका पब्लिश हो रहा है, हाउ इज इट कमिंग ऑल टुगेदर. नाउ दे आर ट्राइंग टू टेल यू हैव टू बी कंसाइज, टू एम्प्लॉय द कॉमन लैंग्वेज यूज करेंगे, दैट इज जस्ट प्रिसाइसली नेसेसरी, और कुछ नहीं करेंगे. टू सर्च आउट न्यू रिदम्स, टू एक्सप्रेस न्यू मूड्स, राइट. सो नए नए रिदम्स को यूज करेंगे. दिस इज ऑल्सो टू सरप्राइज एंड शॉक द पीपल ऑल टुगेदर. To welcome all subjects to the field of topics, to quell vagueness with exact images. Vagueness नहीं रखेंगे, ambiguity नहीं रखेंगे, right? There'll be no vagueness whatsoever, there'll be no ambiguity whatsoever. So best suited, right? Best suited and absence of vagueness, very important. To produce hard verse free from confusion and distortion. किसी भी तरह की ambiguity नहीं होगी आपकी images poetry में. To compare thought as though distilling the essence of meaning, right? So they are very clear, they are absolutely clear over here, and this is something that you'll have to remember. This is what images poetry also talks about. This is what Amy Lowell particularly is also representing in a particular way. Okay, now when we are looking at Amy Lowell, you need to remember that Lowell का जो quantum of poetry related to imagism आ रहा है. She's written works like Can Grenades Castle, Pictures of Floating World, Men, Women and Ghost. All of these are there. Okay. But over here today we will be focusing on two works of Annie Lowell. We will be talking about two works of Annie Lowell, and one of the works of Annie Lowell that we have is called Patterns. Okay, one of the works that we have of Annie Lowell, that is Patterns. Patterns is one of the works that we are able to see that Annie Lowell is coming up with. Okay, now when we are looking at patterns, okay, when we are talking about patterns, patterns के अंदर क्या हो रहा है? Of course, concise style of writing, that has already been said. The speaker here is traumatized by the news that her fiance has been killed in combat and attends a formal dance, right? So she, the need that how you're shocked, you're traumatized, but there are these social pretenses that you also have to be a part of, right? And ये हम लोग करेंगे भी. Even over here we will talk about trauma and literature. We will be discussing about how trauma literature actually functions altogether. That is something that you were able to see altogether, fine. So please keep that in mind. Neha, no particular website, so automatically all the contents differently distributed. Unfortunately, there isn't one particular place. जैसे क्या होता है, philosophy के लिए आप बोल देते हैं या psychology के लिए आप बोल देते हैं that you should just consult say a particular encyclopedia. वैसा possible नहीं है, लेकिन of course आपका Oxford Companions को आप definitely use कर सकते हैं. Online जितना ज़्यादा हो सके, just search at least one or two. You should be able to talk about it. Okay. Shilpa, just focus on both the things regularly. Keep at least 2 to 3 hours for your net preparation. और साथ साथ में keep on doing your master's course. Take masters as a priority because उसमें अगर आपका 60% below, especially for a general category, so try to have a good score altogether. ठीक है? But that's a good problem statement. We can just figure out that if you're in masters and preparing for net, or if you're doing a PhD and preparing for net, how can you manage your time well? We can definitely help you out. Okay. Now, what are you able to see that she's dressed in the constructive brown, powdered wig, jeweled fan of the 18th century. She contrasts with the natural colors, right, of the daffodils. So much of lack of natural beauty that you're able to see. It's just accentuated altogether. Okay, tears sprang from the pent-up emotions, parallel the silent shedding of blossom. So, it's actually beautiful. You should just read it if in case you ever have time. And even अगर आप कोई research कर रहे हो on trauma literature, when you look at Annie Lowell's patterns and the situation that is depicted in the patterns, it's so beautifully portrayed. It's actually something which is heart-wrenching. बहुत ही ज़्यादा heart-wrenching हो जाता है कि एक तो naturalness and fake beauty, that is something which is not even fake. It's something which is made up, right? Now, when you actually go to places like you अब Dubai Blink का जैसे second season भी आ गया है. When you go to places like Dubai or some of these places, it's clearly evident that everybody has gone under the knife, right? Those clear cut, precise cheeks, this sleek nose, the jaws that are done, it just shows that you've gone under the knife. You have shown cosmetic surgeries, and the people who openly talk about it. It's no naturalness, right? Whereas it's natural to have your wrinkles coming in. It just shows the beautiful way that you're aging, because all of us have to age all together. But clearly patterns आजकल के time पे भी, patterns आजकल के time पे भी, that is what it's trying to actually talk about, है ना? जैसे mending balls का भी आजकल के time पे relevance है, patterns में भी आजकल के time का relevance है. So please remember that. And of course, Venus transients, right? Venus transients. This is another important work. It is all at female grace altogether. That is what you're able to see. Pura ka pura. यहाँ पर what are you able to see in patterns or in Venus transients, all of these kind of works that are coming by Annie Lowell. Like I told you, Lowell was trying to talk about that why can't women write? Why can't women write poetry? Remember आपका Helen Sixto क्या कह रही है? Helen Sixto saying ekritya feminine. What is Helen Sixto saying? Ekritya feminine. That means women's writings. Ekritya feminine is women's writing. So what is Helen Sixto talking about? Helen Sixto says a very simple thing, right? Thanks, Yushish. That's why I see you. Now, Helen Sixto talks talks about a very simple thing, and she's saying that, if I'm a woman and I'm wearing heels, a man can say, wow, looks really beautiful, but I can say that no, the heels are painful. It'll cause me arthritis, and therefore I do not want to wear heels. I want to wear my flats, or I want to wear my veggies, etc. Right? So, what are you able to see? Venus Transcends talks about women's perspective, talks about women's idea altogether, and that human and divine का element भी आ रहा है. तो एमी लोवेल की writing, तभी हम लोगों ने starting में कहा था that it's also trying to tell you that why is poetry only the preserve of meal. That's not what she says, but a lot of feminist interpretation of her work has actually come across as that. So Venus transcends, or patterns where the beloved is mourning the death and the pent up emotions come out despite the fact that she's got a powdered wig, she's having the makeup on her face altogether, but she cannot control her emotions. उसकी जो powdered beauty है, that is compared to the natural beauty of the daffodils altogether. That is what you're able to see. So these are the three poets that we did for today. I just have a simple ask from you. कल हम लोग इसको continue करेंगे, and we'll also talk about comparative literature at 10:30 p.m. So don't forget to join on Christmas also. So Santa's going to be visiting all of us as well. Now, very simple, right? Very simple. What you have to keep in mind today is जो आपका ऑक्सफोर्ड कंपेनियन टू अमेरिकन पोइट्री मैंने आपको दिया था, जिसमें मुश्किल से 5 चैप्टर्स हैं, उसको बस आप स्किम थ्रू कर लीजिएगा, जो मैंने आपको शेयर किया था. और सेकंड पार्ट में, फाइन, सेकंड पार्ट में आई विल बी कवरिंग 5 अदर इंपॉर्टेंट पोएट्स, and then I will share the PDF of 20th century American poets. It's a Cliff Notes book. I'll share it on Neerja Ma'am Testbook. इसका PDF को मैं आपको शेयर कर दूंगी. इसका मतलब जो रीड आपने करना है, हम लोग जितना से ज्यादा बेस अपना बढ़ाएंगे ना दिसंबर और जनवरी में, उतना ही बेटर रहेगा हमारे लिए. फाइन. So I'll catch up with all of you tomorrow at 10:30 p.m. and classroom students, don't forget to definitely make sure that you are preparing for the quiz. अब आपका क्लासरूम क्लास ट्यूसडे को है 8:30 p.m. पे, और आपका क्विज का सिलेबस आई होप आप लोगों को याद होगा. आपके क्विज का सिलेबस क्या क्या है क्लासरूम स्टूडेंट्स? हम लोगों ने क्या बोला था? क्लासिकल रोमन लिटरेचर. सो आपको टेरेंस, प्लॉटस, इन सब पे अच्छी तरह से क्वेश्चन पता है. हॉरेस, वर्जिल, गोल्डन पीरियड आपका कैसे स्टार्ट हो रहा है, सिसरो के फिलोसॉफिकल स्पीच से स्टार्ट हो रहा है, एंड ओविड से हो रहा है. सो ओविड के मेटामॉर्फोसिस में कितनी बुक्स में डिवाइडेड है, कितनी मिथ्स आ रही हैं, ये सब आप प्लीज रिवाइज करके आइएगा. क्लासिकल रोमन लिटरेचर जो हम लोगों ने लास्ट वीक क्लासेस में किया है, क्लासिकल ग्रीक लिटरेचर सैफो से लेके हेसियड तक आपको सारे क्वेश्चंस अच्छी तरह से आने चाहिए. क्लासिकल रोमन लिटरेचर, क्लासिकल ग्रीक लिटरेचर, ठीक है. देन आपका योर जर्मन राइटर्स एंड रशियन तीन जो राइटर्स, लाइक सो दिस हैज टू बी डन. ऑलराइट, दिस हैज टू बी डन. सो 8:30 p.m. में अच्छी तरह से अपने क्विज के लिए रेडी रहिएगा आप लोग. क्लासरूम स्टूडेंट्स, डोंट फॉरगेट दैट एट ऑल. वील ऑफ कोर्स बी लुकिंग एट फ्रेंच राइटर्स एट 8:30 p.m. बट ये आपका क्विज भी लिया जाएगा. फाइन. Alright, thanks everyone for joining. I'll catch up with all of you tomorrow at 10:30 p.m. where we'll cover comparative literature and the second part of this entire thing. आज के लिए आपका कोई होमवर्क नहीं है, सिर्फ आपने स्किम थ्रू करना है. और कमेंट सेक्शन में आप मुझे लिख दीजिएगा. जैसे सोनी ने आई थिंक बोला था कि उसको बेचारी को एमपीपीसीएस की तैयारी करनी है, तो आपको कोई भी ऐसे एग्जाम की तैयारी करनी है, कोई भी ऐसा टॉपिक आपको कवर करवाना है, उसके ऊपर मैं आपको वीडियो बना के कंटेंट दे दूंगी. ठीक है, सो यू डोंट हैव टू वरी अबाउट. Thank you so much. Thanks Supratim, thanks Anjali, thanks Shilpa. Take good care of yourselves. I'll catch up with all of you tomorrow at 10:30 p.m. God bless. Take care. Enjoy your Sunday and Merry Christmas to all of you tomorrow. We'll see you. May Santa, bless you all with abundant of health, wealth, prosperity, success, and of course, clearing your exams. I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you. Take care. Thanks Devashish. Thanks Ayushi. Thanks Pragati. Thank you, Bache. Thank you.